Okay. What's up, everybody? Yeah, we're good. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Reeling in the Years. It's a musical podcast, not about musicals, but a music podcast where we go through one year and kind of do, we'll say, a deep analysis, semi-deep analysis of each year, looking at the hits that came out, telling us your opinion or our opinion about it and all that fun jazz. With me today, and probably all the time, is Logan Moore.
Hi, Michael. It's weird. It's weird on the other side. I don't. Most shows I host or something, or that other show we have is kind of fun. But
that is easy. That's for goddamn sure. But yeah. So I'm hosting. I'm Mikey. I don't know if I said I'm Mikey Ruiz. I probably did. I can't remember. The mind is going out.
You're Michael Ruiz.
Yes.
They'll get to know you. Don't worry.
They'll get to know me. Yeah, so we're going to do this nice analysis of the year 1976. How did we choose this year? We were deciding on this podcast, and we're like, hey, what would be a really cool year to do? And I just was like, 1976. And I think it's because I was listening to 2112.
I think it was. It had something to do. It had something to do with 2112 because we always talk about that album, and that album is associated with certain things with this website sort of in some ways or another that we will never disclose. But yeah, I think we were just talking about that, and that was a common album we talked about all the time. And I was like, well, so for this show we're going to be breaking music down year by year, where should we start at? And I was like, let's just do 2112. We talk about that album enough. So what year did that come out? 76. Okay, let's go.
Let's do it. And we found that this is kind of a really odd year.
This really is a weird year. So we talked about it before starting. Obviously, probably should have saved that conversation before we came on air. But yeah, this was a strange year in music. There was a lot of really good artists, but it felt like a transition year from all of the research that I did and all of the music that was coming out. It really didn't feel like there was any one dominant form of music at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Like it just seems like when we talk about this list, you're gonna read these like names of for the top 10 that we have for the year-end Hot 100 singles from Billboard, and you just be like, some of them you're gonna be like, yeah, I know that song. Didn't think this would be the number one song.
Yeah,
but I do know it. And then there's just ones you're like, I've never heard this before in my life. But before we start, and I just thought of this just now, Logan, a lot of people know about your gaming career.
Sure.
Right? Sure.
Yeah.
You did some writing.
I'm sure. Yeah.
More so than your music career.
I was in a newspaper one time playing a guitar. Strangely enough.
So I just wanted to very quickly discuss like how you got into music and like what your musical background is.
Good thought. Good topic for the first episode. So my music taste all directly stems from my parents. They are both really big into rock music. They love classic rock and old hard rock, all that kind of stuff. So I was introduced to music at a really young age, whether it be just, I remember a lot of just driving around it, like in my parents' car and stuff like that. And they always had some CD on, whether it be the Beatles, whether it be the Beach Boys or Foreigner, Journey. I don't know, any of those old bands. I always remember listening to them in the car with my parents. And then I eventually got old enough, and all of this music that I had kind of secondarily been listening to my entire life, I started to realize that I knew it all, and I knew it very well. And I started identifying bands that made song A and B and C that I was aware of, but I didn't know who had made it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I have a pretty good breadth of musical knowledge that I never really was aware of. And from there, it just kind of started. I was into all of that music. And so their taste kind of influenced what I was into early on in my life. So that then led to all kinds of things. And I don't know, I think everybody around probably the age of 10, 12, 13, maybe even younger or older starts I would hope starts getting into music and figuring out a little bit more
Yeah.
about it at some age. And that's kind of how it turned out for me. I had this base of music knowledge that I knew of and I was aware of, but then with friends and things like that, I started getting into alternative rock, which was something like my parents really weren't all into, which led to getting involved with Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all these like 90s bands that like I associate with more. And then from there, it just, I don't know. I'm always looking to discover new music and learn more about music. And I don't know. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
long-ish rundown, I guess, if I could give one.
I think you brought up a good point that a lot of people would develop their taste in music very early on. Like you, a lot of my influence on music comes from my dad in particular, and then later on it was actually my mom. But my dad got me into the classic rock stuff. I was really into listen to a lot of Black Sabbath and Lizzie and stuff like that. And Pink Floyd was another big one. In like third grade, fourth grade, that was like what I was listening to. And then also like the thing, unlike your situation, my dad was really into like the grunge stuff and all that stuff. So I remember he used to play like 10 on his radio, the Pearl Jam album, and Soundgarden he was really into, and then he was also into things like Sublime and 311, Red Hot Chili Peppers. Even though I mean Red Hot Chili Peppers goes even before that, but so yeah, I was really into that stuff as a kid, and then like my own musical taste started with like Green Day and stuff like that. So
I had
like Green Day, I think was maybe my first band I could identify as my favorite band, and that was when Warning came out. I think
back in like what?
2000.
Was it 2000?
I think it was 2000.
That sounds right. Yeah,
maybe 01, but it would have been.
It's one of those. It was very early 2000s.
It also helped that I was also learning how to play drums when I was 7. So I would try to play songs that like my brother or my dad would like, or like I would play. At one point, I was playing in a band with my brother or playing music with my brother. So we'd kind of go off of each other and figure out songs to play together. So that influenced me a lot too. My brother's tastes, and which are a lot of glam rock stuff. So a lot of Kiss, a lot of Small Faces isn't really glam rock, but the Small Faces or Slade, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's where my musical background and influence comes from. Definitely from my parents. And
that's always like that's one of my favorite things with music, though, is you meet other people through music, and then their tastes kind of start to influence yours. Like I can't tell you how many times I've one of my neighbors, his name is Nick Newman. I'd say him and I's music taste definitely, we bounced a lot of bands off of one another that eventually led to us discovering certain bands that we weren't aware of, that the other wasn't aware of. And then that would influence our taste later on. And it's like, hey, I found this band, and I know because you introduced me to this band, I know you like this band, so you should listen to this band. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I went over to his house and he showed me, I just bought this album off iTunes by so-and-so, and you should totally listen to it because I know you'd like it. And I would do the same to him. Like he was one of the first people who turned me on to Radiohead, which as you know, as you know, but not everybody else does. Like they're my favorite band ever. Is pretentious and douchey and so 2000s of me. But he was one of the first people who turned me on to Radiohead, and it's like, you should check out OK Computer, and you should check out the Bends and their older stuff. And then he's like, and you should listen. You should listen to Kid A. And I'm like, I don't know about Kid A. This is really weird, but I really enjoy that community aspect to music, and it's why I think festivals work so well. Like I've been to Bonnaroo, and it's so easy to just talk to people out of nowhere. It's because you're all there because you have this shared love of music and similar taste in music and things like that. And that's always been one of my favorite things, is just getting to know new bands. That's always one of the high points in just, I'd say, life in general. Honestly, whenever I discover a new band that I'm like super into, that is always like really exciting to me. Like I never knew of this band, but they have 15 years worth of music now that I get to go through and discover for the first time. And that's always really fun to me. And I've loved that with music. So Yeah, and that's kind of how I've always been. I try to be really open-minded about music too. Like I don't block myself off to certain genres except for country. It's about the only one, but modern country blows, so I don't feel bad about that. But this has even led into me getting more into like rap and hip hop lately. Like I've really been on a rap journey like the last 18 months to 2 years, I'd say, just getting more into that and learning more about hip hop. So I don't know. Just
I'm with you.
There's a lot of stuff we can talk about on this show, and I'm sure there's a lot of stories about certain bands we discovered or whatever that'll come out over the course of the many episodes of this show that we plan on having.
There'll be a lot. Yeah. Similarly with Radiohead, with me with Emerson, Lake and Palmer, because my brother showed me them. Because at that time it was like 4th grade, so I was into Rush. Or no, I would have been middle school. So it was like 6th grade. I was really into Rush. And then he showed me Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He's like, "Oh, you like these guys? Here's Emerson, Lake and Palmer." And Emerson, Lake and Palmer, not my favorite band, but they're like my number 2. Number 3.
My mom's obsessed with them.
And because of Emerson, Lake
like
and
her
Palmer,
favorite band ever.
Yeah. And because of them, I got into Yes, which is amazing. Like they're such a great
prog rock really early.
Yeah, I got really into prog rock.
Which then probably led to like what, Coheed and those guys?
Well, yeah, Coheed was a weird one. I used to hate them as a kid. Like I remember when what's that, the Good Eye Sniper song. I don't even know why I can't remember the song name, which is Favorite House Atlantic. I remember when that song came out, and my friend and I would make fun of it so hard. And then, like, fast forward to 18-year-old, 20-year-old me, and I'm so into it. I am so into that, like, music. It's crazy.
That's how me and System of a Down started out. I was like, "This sounds so stupid. This is hilarious, man. Chop Suey's the weirdest sounding song ever." I laugh at it. Yeah. And the next thing I know, I'm like walking through middle school listening to freaking
Toxicity and stuff.
Yes, some rules. So
that's funny.
A lot of my favorite bands have started out with me making fun of them in some way.
Yeah, Coheed was definitely one of those bands that I just really did not like. And I got really into them later on in life. But anyway, now that we know our musical knowledge, let's talk about 1976.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're gonna begin with what the top 10 Billboard year-end Hot 100 singles from that year. Number 1 was "Silly Love Songs" by Wings.
Great song. I want to point this out. Like, I love that song. Not deserving of number 1 in my opinion.
And this is what's going to be fun about this, because after we list these off, I want to kind of give our opinion and our analysis of like.
Yeah. So do you want
what's popular?
You want to run down all of them at once, then, and then we can come back to it? That's fine. I'll keep my peanut gallery comments just until the end.
Just as good, if not better. Number 2, "Don't Go Breaking My Heart" by Elton John and Kiki D.
I guess, yeah. I have no idea who that is.
I don't know who Kiki D is, but I guess it's Elton John.
You know
the song. You know the song, right?
Yeah, I know the song.
I don't know what Disco Lady is, but number 3 is "Disco Lady" by Johnny Taylor.
Yeah.
I don't know what that song is.
I don't know what that song is either. I'm glad I'm not alone.
The next number 4 is "December 1963. Oh, What a Night" by the Four Seasons.
I feel like I know this song, but I'm not sure. Is that what it is?
I'm pretty sure that's what the song is.
We'll find out. I'll listen to it later.
Yeah. I never knew, and if it is, I didn't know the song was called "December 1963. So, "Play That Funky Music" by Wild Cherry is number 5, which everybody knows that song.
That's a great song.
Number 6 is "Kiss and Say Goodbye" by the Manhattans, which I don't know this off the top of my head, but I know the name the Manhattans. So
I feel like I've heard of it too, but I don't know the group intimately or know that song by any means. Yeah.
"Love Machine" by the Miracles. It's number 7. 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover by Paul Simon is number 8. "Love Is Alive" by Gary Wright is number 9. And number 10 is "A Fifth of Beethoven" by Walter Murphy and the Big Apple Band.
Very interesting list here.
So
again, I think this list kind of adds credence to what we were saying. Like there was no one dominant form of music, and I don't think there ever really is in any year.
no.
But this is an interesting grouping. You've got the Four Seasons, Paul McCartney with Wings,
Elton
and
John,
then Elton John with the duet song.
Paul Simon.
Paul Simon, which he was probably, I forget when Simon and Garfunkel split up.
It would have been like right after, I think. It would have been.
I feel like it had been
it would have been
years.
later, yeah. A little bit later.
Yeah, his first album was I'm mad that I forget the name of it. It had like I'm pretty sure it had Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard on it.
Yeah.
It was his first album. I can't remember what it's called though.
Yeah.
Was it called Mother and Child Reunion? I know that's a song, but I don't know if that's the album name. Anyway,
I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting to see, and I think this will be fun to see as the years go on. Looking at what the like top 10 singles are and being like, these are not the songs that I know from 1976. And you start to realize like what the singles are at the time and then what becomes timeless music.
Yes.
Which is interesting because like even if we look at it now, like looking at the songs that came out in 2016 or 2015 or whatever, like what are the songs that are going to be, the timeless songs of that year?
Yeah.
I legitimately have no idea because you look at like what their Hot 100 is from like 2016. You're like, looks all garbagey. Like I don't know what it could possibly be.
That's why it'll be way more interesting to do. So if we didn't say this at the top, I don't know if we did. We're totally going to jump around with this show as far as years go. Every episode's going to focus on a different year. Next week, we don't know. Actually, I think we might know what we're doing.
We kind of know.
We'll talk about it at the end. But yeah, it'll be interesting when we end up doing like, let's do 2010 this week or something like that. And going back and looking at some of those songs, it's like,
we'll be like,
oh crap, remember this?
Yeah, that'll be a nice nostalgic trip for us because we're so young. So
we're such children.
Because 2010 is really not that long ago.
It's not.
But yeah, it's fun to see. It's fun to see this. Like all these, I guess, Play That Funky Music is kind of a timeless song.
That was the one that stood out to me as well.
Like Silly Love Songs I guess could be one too. Like it's still played on the radio. I'd
say the three big ones on this.
Don't Go Breaking My Heart's pretty big.
Don't Go Breaking My Heart's pretty big. Now that I'm thinking about it. I'd say that, Play That Funky Music, and honestly, probably 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. That was a pretty huge song for Paul Simon. That song specifically, I'm a huge Paul Simon fan. I think he is like God tier singer-songwriters. I think he's one of the best songwriters of all time.
What about Art Garfunkel? How do you feel about him?
Really good harmonizer and singing partner. He's fine. You've never heard about him having a solo career because his solo stuff's not very good. He didn't do very much of it either. But Paul Simon was the backbone to that group, and I think Art Garfunkel's more of a performer than he is a songwriter.
Yeah.
But 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. That song's really weird because the beginning is so mellow to it, and then it gets into that like poppy, like two-step, like it's, you know what I'm talking about? It's one of those, there's certain songs that have like these dramatic tonal shifts out of nowhere, which is fine sometimes, but it's also really strange in others. And only certain songs can get away with it. I think this is one of the ones that can get away with it.
For sure.
But I don't know. I love Paul Simon though.
I would say "Oh What a Night" is also a pretty big one. I think that it's shown in like a lot of movies. I think
the Four Seasons being relevant in 1976 as well as kind of.
We'll get to that because they were on New Year's Rockin' Eve. Like they were one of the performers.
That's interesting. I have no idea about that.
Yeah, so that's like one of the things that we'll talk about.
Yeah, but looking through some of these others, I don't know a fifth of Beethoven. I even looked up Love Machine because I thought I might have known that. I pulled that up on YouTube a second ago and listened to it. No idea what that is. There's I don't know, an interesting grouping of 10 though for sure.
It seems like a lot of disco. It seems like a lot of
That's the thing, though. Again, I felt like this was an in-between year. I feel like disco was dying off a little bit by this point. It was transitioning. What was disco was transitioning more into funk, which I think is seen a little bit more through like play that funky music.
I
even
also,
funk is like in a weird area at this point.
I also think a lot of new genres are emerging. Like what we know of certain genres, I feel like that stuff is emerging at this particular time. And we'll also get to that later.
I have some things to say about that as well.
Yeah. So next we're going to look at the Billboard 200, which looks at the albums, the best albums of the year. I don't have the every week, like which album was number one, because some of these albums also took up like a long time. So the Billboard 200, the albums that were featured on there were Chicago 9, Chicago's Greatest Hits by Chicago, Gratitude by Earth, Wind, and Fire, Desire by Bob Dylan, Their Greatest Hits 1971 to 1975 by the Eagles, Frampton Comes Alive by Peter Frampton, At the Speed of Sound by Wings, Presence by Led Zeppelin, Black and Blue by the Rolling Stones, Breezin' by George Benson, Fleetwood Mac by Fleetwood Mac, and Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder. The best performing album of that year was Frampton Comes Alive, which I don't think is very surprising whatsoever. Like if you go into if you go into your friend's father's basement or attic and go into their vinyl records, guaranteed Frampton Comes Alive.
Yeah, we have that on vinyl at my house.
Yeah, my dad sold all of his vinyls. I asked him though, because I went to my friend's house and he had it there. I'm like, Dad, did you have Frampton Comes Alive? He's like, yeah, everybody has that fucking album.
It's one of the highest selling. Probably not anymore since everything's gone digital, but I think it definitely through the 90s and stuff like that. It was like one of the highest selling albums of all time.
I would say that it's probably one of the highest selling, if not the like live albums of all time.
Live, it's for sure.
It has to be number one. It's a huge album, and it's a great album. It's a really good live album.
It is really good.
Yeah. So, what do you think of this? I think this is where we actually see some things that we actually know.
That's and there's even some stuff like I have written down that wasn't on this list that we'll get to in a second. This is way more indicative of, I think, kind of how this year was compared to the singles.
Yeah, this is how I think of what 1976 is.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of good albums on this. The interesting thing too, speaking of like highest grossing albums of all time, the Eagles, The Greatest Hits, that's also one of the highest selling albums
just of all time. Yeah.
Ever. Yeah. That album has sold so many millions of copies.
Has it sold more than the Fleetwood Mac what's that one?
Rumors? I want to say yes.
Is it?
I'm
Dark Side of the Moon number one?
I'm not sure. I forget, dude. There is so
Or is Thriller number one?
See, I thought it was Thriller, but I second guessed myself when I thought that a second ago. I'm not really sure. We'd have to
look.
I don't know. Maybe we can come back.
I know that Rumors, that Eagles album, Thriller, and Dark Side of the Moon are like some of the best selling albums of all time. There's some really cool albums on here. I'd like to say that Presence is like one of my favorite Zeppelin albums, if not my favorite Zeppelin album personally. Which I know you think is blasphemous, but it's
okay. Sorry. Before we do, the highest selling album of all time.
Yeah,
Eagles, Their Greatest Hits.
Okay, so the
highest according to this article I pulled up on a quick Google search, that has sold 29 million copies, and then right below that is Michael Jackson's Thriller at 29 million.
And then what's below that?
Here we go, leading it right back into the conversation. Your favorite Led Zeppelin album, Led Zeppelin 4, supposedly is number 3 here.
Oh my god, that doesn't surprise me though. That's not surprising. Out of all the albums that Led Zeppelin has, the best selling album would be 4. That just makes sense.
It does make sense. Presence. It's fine.
So here's my thing with just later Zeppelin. I'm I'm a huge fan of later Zeppelin as opposed to early Zeppelin.
What do we consider later? From Presence on? Because that's
no. I think from Holy or from Physical Graffiti on.
Oh, that's
okay. So let's say one.
So
2,
after
3,
their
4,
numbered albums, essentially.
Yeah, is later Zeppelin. That's where I feel that Zeppelin is their own. It's like their music. That's the music that they're making. Whereas like, not that I'm saying it's bad. It's just I'm saying that there are clear influences in like Zeppelin 1, 2, and 3. Less than 3. I love 3.
Yeah, because they
3 is
stole
one of
all
my
those
favorites.
songs.
But 1 and 2, like straight up clear influences to the point to where they straight up steal songs and call them different names. And that's where I'm like, I
forgot about that one right now.
I love Good Times, Bad Times. That's one of my favorite Zeppelin songs. I love I can't remember what's the one that goes from Led Zeppelin 2. It's from one song goes straight into the other one. Is that Heartbreaker? And then the Lemon song?
Possibly.
Or it's Heartbreaker. Yeah. I believe it's that.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Like I love that transition. Like I think that those 2 tracks are amazing. There are songs from those albums that I love, but
Zeppelin 1 really does that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like that transition from one to the next. I mean, between Black Mountainside, which then feeds directly into, I think Your Time Is Gonna Come.
Your Time Is Gonna Come is an amazing song. Oh yeah, and then
or I think reverse that. I think it's Your Time Is Gonna Come leads into Black Mountainside or whatever
that's another one. That's another one that's amazing.
And then really one of those kind of leads directly into, not as succinctly, but it just kind of cuts, and then Dazed and Confused immediately starts. So it's similar-ish.
Is that well? That's Communication Breakdown, and then
I don't
Dazed
think
and Confused?
So.
Well, I know it's Good Times, Bad Times, number 1.
I mean, I can pull up the track list.
I know Dazed and
Confused. It's not 76. It's not 76. So we'll talk about. We can talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about it another time. But anyway. Yeah,
that's gonna be the hard part of this show, is not getting too off topic into other.
Anyways, Presence. I think this is this album that has Achilles' Last Stand in it.
A baller song.
What an amazing song! I play drums, right, and the songs. My drum set is John Bonham's drum set. Like it's the oversized bass drum. Everything's oversized. I even have the same cymbals he did. Like I love his drum set.
Stole them directly from John Bonham.
From John Bonham, from his lying corpse in the ground,
from his grave. They buried him in his drum set.
Yeah. So I have that set. Like I have the one. If you've ever seen that live Zeppelin DVD, that has like the weird mountain thing in it, the plateau, and there's like the desert, and then it's the earlier one. I can't remember what the performance is. It's like a maple drum set. I have that drum set, and I love it. But like playing Achilles' Last Stand on that drum set is like a goddamn what an adrenaline rush that song is to play on drums. It's so fun. It's so epic.
It's that song's really good. I haven't listened to Presence in a while, so I'm kind of, and I never really listened to it a ton either. It was one of those ones where I don't care for later Zeppelin. I'd say Presence, In Through the Outdoor, and Coda. I'm a huge Led Zeppelin fan. I think all those albums are pretty crummy.
Well, Coda has that. Coda's a weird one because it's a B-sides album.
Yeah.
So it is stuff from earlier Zeppelin. Like I said, there's that song. So that live thing that I was talking about, that first song I think from Coda is on that live thing, and it's from like 1971 or something like that. So
yeah, Coda didn't. I think Coda released in like 82.
Yeah, it did. So
because I saw that last night when I was for this. I can't get into later Zeppelin as much. I don't think they're bad. They're obviously, their musicianship is still incredibly high. They're all still phenomenal at what they do. It just doesn't hook me the same way that those early albums do.
Yeah.
And I think the same can be said for a lot of people. I mean, their later stuff's not as well known at all. Like
it is. It's true. It's not.
They got into some weird areas with. I mean, look at like In Through the Outdoor. They got freaking.
In Through the Outdoor is a weird one.
Hot Dog and
Hot Dog's
awesome. What's the other one on there? Carousel Ambra, is that on there?
Yeah, that's another one. There's the one. That's the real All of My Love.
All of My Love's great. I love
That's
that
a really
song.
good
Man.
song.
That's a phenomenal song. I really do.
But that is on In Through the Outdoor.
But even that, like, that's a great song. Totally different from like everything else they've done.
Yeah. I do like Physical Graffiti is a really great one too, and that's where they go
That's
into
before Presence, right?
Yeah, that's right before it, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that has some really good like bass and drum tracks. I think where I love how tight it is. Like Wonton Song is a good example of it.
Yeah.
It's like the like that's just so good. Anyway,
yeah.
It's we're gonna get carried away with Zeppelin if we keep on talking about it. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good list of albums here. Like
let me go back and open it back up here and see what else there's. Presence, again, fine. I think it was kind of the start of
Black and Blue is not.
Black and Blue is not good. No,
we're not even.
You and I both. We don't care. We don't care for the Rolling Stones very much in general. But yeah, that's not a very good album.
I like
the key song. Go ahead.
Oh, song or Fleetwood Mac. I like that album.
What's on that album? I don't even remember.
It's one of the albums that also has a ton of hits on it. If I'm not mistaken, Rhiannon.
Yeah.
Fleetwood Mac album. It has like a ton of the hits on there.
Fleetwood Mac came out in July 1975. So technically, it didn't release in 76.
That's
it's
super
sold
weird.
fast, but it did not release this year. And I don't know if some of these others did either. I'm going to guess that their greatest hits by the Eagles also did not release this year. I'm also going to guess that I went through this last night. I feel like I know which ones did come out in which years.
Okay, so
Frampton Comes Alive did come out this year.
So yeah, so Rhiannon, Landslide was on this one.
Landslide's really good.
Hold on. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good album. I really like it.
It's one of their more notable ones for sure.
Definitely, for sure.
Their 10th studio album? What?
Yeah, Fleetwood Mac's been around for a really long time.
Wow.
They've been around since the 60s.
That's one of the other, I mean, now that we're talking about albums, I guess, I mean, we'll get into more of our personal favorites here in a second. One thing I really noticed about this year when I was looking stuff up last night, there was a lot of groups that released 2 albums in the same year, like one in the first half of the year. And then that's insane. If anybody did that nowadays, Thin Lizzy did that. Elton John did it as well. He released his live album that had like Benny and the Jets and Crocodile Rock and stuff like that on it.
Yeah.
And then he released in the latter half of the year, maybe that album that Don't Go Break My Heart was on. Yeah. If that was on an album, I can't speak.
I don't know.
God's discography. I
have no idea
whatsoever.
Yeah, the Thin Lizzy albums was Jailbreak, and Johnny the Fox. Like those are debatably the best 2 Thin Lizzy albums ever. like when you look, I mean, everybody knows Jailbreak. Jailbreak has The Boys Are Back in Town and Jailbreak. Everybody knows that. Johnny the Fox has some. They're not like famous songs. They have. I mean, one of my favorite songs is Borderline. That's on there, and that's a really great song. Johnny the Fox is a really good song. I think it's called Johnny the Fox meets Jimmy the Weed. That's a really cool one, nice and funky. I think Do Anything You Want To is on that too. I might be wrong though, but it's just it's a really great album. I really love Johnny the Fox. So yeah,
I can't speak too much to Thin Lizzy, but what I've heard I do like. But I just don't know a ton of their music.
Thin Lizzy, from the very first album until maybe Black Rose, is just fantastic music. It's just all great.
Again, one of those bands that I should probably listen to a little more.
You should.
That's going to be a common theme throughout this show. Is I know that band. I know they're pretty good. Just don't really listen to them.
That's what's going to also be great about it, is that like we're going to look at these bands and I'm like, I'm going to listen to this.
Yeah,
what was so good about this?
I've tried to listen to music going into this, like associated with this year, and at least over the past couple of days. The last album I think worth talking about on this is "Songs in the Key of Life" by Stevie Wonder.
Yes.
This was a really good Stevie Wonder album. It has my personal favorite song by him, Sir Duke. I've always been a huge fan of that song for some reason. I really like the horns in it. he's one of the, I'd say probably best pop singers ever. He's up there. He was kind of Michael Jackson before Michael Jackson in some ways. I mean, they were both going back and forth.
I could agree with what you're talking. I get where you're coming from. Like, he kind of is that.
Yeah, I mean, although all of those Motown people back in the day are all kind of, it seems like, lumped into the same pool between the Commodores and Stevie Wonder and the Jackson 5, people like that. But Stevie's great, and there's a reason he's like a legend for many reasons. I think most people consider this to be like one of his better front to back albums. It's got Wish on it too, which is a solid song. There's a lot of singles on this album. Yeah, again, one of the, I don't listen to him a lot on my own, but I respect him and I know he's good. When I do listen to his music, I really like it, but I don't know. There's a lot of music out there. I don't make time to sit down and listen to Stevie Wonder for an hour or anything like that. But good. This is good pop. A good pop album for '76, I'd say.
For sure, I totally agree. It's a really fantastic album, and if you haven't listened to it, definitely do it. Because we could talk about how I like Presents and stuff like that. Honestly, the best album I think from this 200 one is the Songs in the Key of Life. It's freaking amazing. It's a really good album.
As far as from this list, yeah,
because
there's this we also list haven't talked about.
So
waiting, obviously, most notably one we talked about at the top of this show. There's a couple others that, like, looking back on, are like legendary albums, and
we're like, why aren't these here? What's going on? Let's talk about. So Rolling Stone magazine they're a big music outlet in some sort of fashion. They have their top 10 albums from 1976. I'm going to list them off. Some of them will be the same, like Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder. I believe I put this in order, I think, too. So number one was that for them. The Royal Scam by Steely Dan, that has Kid Charlemagne. I think it's on that one.
It is. I'm pretty sure you're right. Yeah,
it is. So that was a pretty big one. Black and Blue by the Rolling Stones was number 3. Number 4 was Their Greatest Hits by the Eagles. Now
that's kind of cheating. How can you rank that out?
I think it totally is. I think, but whatever. Station to Station by David Bowie. That's an amazing album. I love Station to Station.
Yeah,
and we'll get to that. Chronicle Volume 1 by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Another amazing one.
Another greatest hits, though, right?
Yeah, I believe so. But
that's
awesome.
That's like the well-known Creedence album. Like that's the one you can go to Walmart and probably find right now.
Yeah, if you go into your friend's father's basement or attic, you will find that album on vinyl. Hotel California by the Eagles,
which is a big omission that I was referring to earlier.
Yeah, it's really weird. Night Moves by Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band was number 8. Heat Treatment by Graham Parker was number 9, and Rocks by Aerosmith was number 10. Which is a pretty decent Aerosmith album.
It's got Last Child, Back in the Saddle on it as well. It's probably one of Aerosmith's more rockin' albums for sure.
I think that's like the one that kind of like, it's that one and Toys in the Attic. I think that encapsulates what Aerosmith is and what I think good Aerosmith is.
I'm not a Aerosmith guy, but I think. Yeah, I can agree
like
with that.
when you want to tell somebody like this is what Aerosmith is. If you want to show somebody Aerosmith, those are the 2 albums I would totally show.
Yeah, you wouldn't have them go listen to like Dude Looks Like a Lady or something like that. Like they that's the thing. Aerosmith has like a bunch of really popular songs, but they're odd, and I don't feel like they're indicative of the kind of band they are. Between that and I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Like all of these like, strange songs that I don't feel like are what Aerosmith is at the core.
I would rather just get an Aerosmith like greatest hits and you'll be fine. You'll be good. So I'm gonna have a question for you. Do we want to go through do we want to talk about this top 10?
We can, I guess. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of crossover.
Like honestly, I think that for me, the big album to look at here is Station to Station. I think it's just such a great David Bowie album. I think it's one of David Bowie's best albums that he has. It's I don't know.
I don't think I've ever listened to that one.
what is on there?
Golden Years.
Yeah, Golden Years is like the big
That's
song
like
on there.
Single off of it, but I don't know anything else off the top of my head.
Like when I listen to it, and this is how I listen to most music, so I don't really know the track names, is I just put the album on and then I shut my phone off and just listen to it. So I never know what the track names are.
That's my problem too.
So
that's more of a recent problem. I used to not have that issue.
Yeah. So yeah, it has Golden Years. Golden Years was the big album or the big song on there, and was actually on like the list for singles somewhere in that 100. But
yeah,
I can't remember.
I think it was like top 10 or not top 10, top 15 or 20, top 15 or 20. I think it was in that range.
It was around there, so it was a pretty big song for the time. That album's amazing. I love that album. That's the one that I would recommend everybody to listen to, which we'll get to in a second. Now, what I was going to ask though is, do we want to go through the events part first, or do we want to look at our top 5 albums since we're talking about?
Let's just stick with albums since we're already there, because I think we're at a point where I know I at least have like a list of albums that we haven't mentioned yet that I think are worth mentioning, that I'm looking back, I think are surprising that weren't mentioned at the time. At the time they didn't give respect, but looking back at it now, it's like, how could you not bring up this album?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. We could stay on albums, I think, before we do events.
Well, Logan, what are your top albums of 1976?
Let's just talk about 2112, I guess, since neither of us have yet. I mean, let's just get to this point.
Let's just get to it. 2112 is a goddamn masterpiece. The masterclass in prog rock, let me tell you. It's really good. I love it.
Is that your favorite Rush album?
No.
What is?
No, it's not. Hemispheres.
What's on that? I forget.
The big one's The Trees, but it has Cygnus X1 Book 2, Hemispheres, Circumstances, The Trees, and La Villa Strangiato in that order.
Oh, La Villa Strangiato.
it is the hard prog rock album by Rush. It's amazing. I would say that it always flips between that and A Farewell to Kings. So A Farewell to Kings has A Farewell to Kings, Xanadu, Closer to the Heart, Cinderella Man, Madrigal, and it's Cygnus X1 Book 1.
I love how short those old Rush albums are. It's just like 6 songs. There you go.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah, because the album's still like 40 minutes.
Yep.
So like Hemispheres is 4 songs, and it's a 40-minute album.
As far as prog rock songs go by Rush, is 2112 like their best? The song. I'm talking only the song.
I wouldn't say so, because I think out of their long form songs, I personally like Cygnus X1 Book 2, and I really, really like Natural Science from Permanent Waves.
Awesome.
It's such, and I really like The Camera Eye on Moving Pictures. Those are the 3 like long.
That song's only like 3 or 4 minutes though, isn't it?
No, that's a 10-minute song.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah. I think you're thinking Witch Hunt.
That's probably what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so those are the 3 like long form Rush songs that I freaking love. But yeah, 2112, if you want to talk about like popular 20-minute songs, this is
where they started. This is where I think they started coming into their own.
So this is
mainstream people started knowing a little bit more about them.
Yes.
And then they released this on people, and they're like, "What on earth? This is really good, but holy crap, this song takes up one side of my album."
So the funny thing about I mean, that wasn't really uncommon, I wouldn't say.
No.
But 2112 was a response to Caress of Steel, in which Caress of Steel got horrible critical response. Like it was horrible. It was bad. And they were sad about it. Like it sucked, because that Caress of Steel is a really good album. It has some really great songs. Bastille Day is on there. That was another one that they came out with 2 albums that year. They came out with Fly By Night and Caress of Steel, 1975. But they had like 2112 is just, I don't know. I don't even know where we're going with this.
You said it was like their response to Caress.
It was like their response to Caress of Steel, because they had one more shot, I think, with like the record company. If they didn't make like a good album, like they were just gonna get cut, and they're like, well, fuck it, we're just gonna make what. So they were like, we're just gonna make whatever we want. So they made 2112, a thing like this hard prog rock album, I guess, for for them, I guess, even though it's like kind of poppy in some sorts. Like
yeah, for sure.
A Passage to Bangkok is a big one on there. God damn it, dogs! So, my friends are gonna come through the door in a second.
You're good.
Yeah, but yeah, like there's just so many great tunes out there. Something for Nothing's a good one.
If you want, I can cut all this out.
Okay, that'd be fun. So yeah, there's just some good tunes on there.
Okay.
It's done. Okay. So yeah, there's just a lot of good tunes on there. Tears is a really good one. They're all good. Lessons is one of my favorite songs by them. It's really good.
I think the other thing that is like supposed, I'm pretty sure that I'm right with this. 2112 was kind of when Neil started writing the songs as well.
He started in Caress of Steel. And he kind of started in Fly By Night because he wrote a
little bit, yeah.
He wrote like By Tor and the Snow Dog.
He did, but this is. I think it's very indicative. 2112 is very indicative of Neil because he is such a sci-fi fan and things like that. And this album is sci-fi.
I think Caress of Steel is another one too because that's all like Lord of the Rings stuff. Like Fountain of Lameth is the 20-minute song on there, and that's very obviously Lord of the Rings. So
yeah, but when Neil started helping in with their writing, they changed.
Yeah,
they always had prog rock roots. I mean,
well, the first
got Working Man and stuff on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were more of a classic rock. They were like a Zeppelin clone almost. In like, not that that's bad. It's just that for their first album and some of Fly By Night is very, I think Zeppelin influenced, and you could tell like it. I know that they've always credited them and like Jeff Beck and stuff like that as like people that influenced them. So
it's hard not to be influenced by Zeppelin during that time period.
Yeah, definitely.
As far as other albums go, I don't know. I've got a couple others here. How many do you have that you want to talk about?
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I already talked about Station to Station. That's on my list. So I already talked about that. And we talked about Presence already. I talked about Johnny the Fox already. So I only really have like 2, 3 more.
I've got a couple I can go through here. High Voltage by AC/DC, their first international album. That was released in the early half of 1976. And that album's great. That album is really, they had 2 albums beforehand. They had High Voltage and TNT. And then I think they merged both of those albums into the High Voltage that went out internationally because they were located in Australia. So their music was never played over here. I think that's one of their better albums, top to bottom, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm not huge into AC/DC now. I think a lot of people get into them when they're younger, maybe.
Yeah, I agree, because I was into them when I was younger, and I'm really not anymore.
I was huge into AC/DC back in the day, and I always thought that High Voltage was one of their top albums, like ever, in any era. Yeah. So I've always really loved that. It's also worth noting, again, groups are releasing 2 bands. They released High Voltage in the first half of 1976 and then Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap in the latter half of 1976, which I think they had already had all of those songs recorded. And again, those were just the international releases that were finally going out to the masses. But still, those are like 2 of their more well-known albums, I'd say. Of course, Back in Black and stuff like that's their most well-known. But as far as the early, what's his name, Bon Scott?
Yeah.
Or their Bon Scott stuff, like those are their more notable early releases, if I had to say. Boston formed. Yeah, that's I don't know if they formed in 76. Boston's first album, one everybody knows, with this,
Boston?
Just Boston with
the
UFO. I mean, the UFO is their symbol, so that's kind of a dumb thing to say. The one the one you can go in your dad's basement or attic and find in your record collection. That one.
Yeah.
Top to bottom, I think that's one of the best classic rock albums of all time.
It's really good.
There's really not any bad songs on that entire album.
There's not. It's a really good album.
And you hear all of them on the radio still today.
That has like what, More Than a Feeling? Does it have Foreplay?
It has Foreplay A Long Time. It has Rock and Roll Band. It has Oh, what's the other one called?
I used to listen to this.
Peace of Mind.
Yeah, Peace of Mind. Does it have Smokin'? No, Smokin's on Smokin'. I think.
Let me see. I'm pulling it up right now. It has. So I mean that by itself. So More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind, Foreplay, Long Time, Rock and Roll Band, Smokin' is on.
Oh, it does have Smokin'. Okay, I thought they had an album called Smokin', and it was on Smokin'.
Hitch a Ride, Something About You, and Let Me Take You Home Tonight.
Yeah.
It's like those are some huge songs. Some bands would be lucky to have the number of hits like across like 5 albums that I think Boston had on that one.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not like they're not like one of my favorite bands ever, but I think as far as classic rock albums go, that's definitely up in the pantheon because everybody knows that album. Everybody knows some song on that album, especially people from our generation who either had Guitar Hero early on and More Than a Feeling was on that, or they had Rock Band and Foreplay Long Time was on that. Like, I don't know if anybody used to play those games, but those are definitely notable. And then the last one that I wanted to mention, I'm sorry, I have 2 more. Kiss, Destroyer.
Oh.
I'm not really big into Kiss, but that's one of their better albums.
That's
easily.
an awesome album.
I'd say Alive and Destroyer are probably their 2 best albums.
Alive, I think is their best album.
Alive's really good. Alive's when they started coming into their own.
It's definitely their best live album.
That's probably true for sure. Destroyer is also one of those ones that like everybody knows of too. And I don't know if you could go in your dad's basement and
it might be
it's
there.
a pretty iconic album. It really is. And Detroit Rock City, God of Thunder, Shout It Out Loud, Beth. I mean, there's a good amount of hits on this album for that. Like, if you even know cursory amounts of Kiss, you're gonna know a decent amount of those songs.
I'm more of a Love Gun fan, but yeah, Destroyer is freaking awesome.
Love Gun is pretty good. I love that stupid song.
That song's amazing. I love that song. It's good.
And the last album that I wanted to mention that we have not mentioned yet, and I think this might be like the best. And again, I'm not a huge fan of this group, but I think this album specifically, top to bottom, it's kind of unreal how many hits are on it. Steve Miller Band's Fly Like an Eagle.
Oh, yeah.
1976.
That's a really good album.
Freaking phenomenal album, dude.
Does it have Jungle Love on there?
No, but it does have Fly Like an Eagle plus the space intro or whatever. It also has Rockin' Me. It has, I think I had it written down on our sheet here. Let me look. I can't remember.
Probably has most of the hits.
It's got most of their singles on it that you would know of. I can't remember what the other stupid one's called. I gotta know this next time before we come in here.
Yeah.
So it can't just be, oh, what's that one song? The podcast. But yeah, Fly Like an Eagle, top to bottom, is really freaking good. And I don't know, Steve Miller Band's one of those like classic rock groups that like everybody I think knows one of their songs, but you don't really know the group very much. I couldn't name anybody in that band outside of Steve Miller, and I only know him because his name's in the title of the band. Yeah,
it's true. I saw him at Summerfest, and he did really well until he started playing like 80s Steve Miller, and that was not good.
That was not good.
Not good. But he played Jungle Love, and that was amazing. So it's like
those were the only ones I had this year.
It's one of my favorite songs. I love that song. So.
Jungle is really good.
It's amazing. The albums that I want to talk about, we went through some of them. But Jailbreak, I didn't really talk about, but Jailbreak by Thin Lizzy. That's an album that I listen to pretty frequently. And it's not even because of like Jailbreak and The Boys Are Back in Town. Those are really great songs. But Angel from the Coast, Romeo and the Lonely Girl, Warriors, Emerald, Cowboy Song is on this. Like they have 3 like hits, and then the rest of it is just it's amazing. It's a fantastic album. Especially I really love that song, Romeo and the Lonely Girl. I really love the guitar in that song. The other one that I have here is A Day at the Races by Queen, which has a ton of like has huge songs. It's got and a lot of them has Tie Your Mother Down,
Somebody to
Somebody
Love on
to
that.
Love,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy, like that's another really great album. And Queen, I don't know if Queen is in like my favorite bands category, but I very much respect them as musicians, and especially Freddie Mercury. He's just one of the greatest frontmen in rock history. So, Date the Races is a fantastic album, also. And then I got A Trick of the Tail by Genesis, which is another one that I legitimately listened to last night, and I listen to it pretty frequently. It's probably my favorite Genesis album.
Genesis is one of those groups I can't speak to like even
It's
a little bit.
so there's like I think there's two different Genesis bands. There's the one when Phil Collins took over, and then there's the one before Phil Collins took over. And this was before he took over. So I mean, I believe he's still in the band though. Like he was
still in the group at this point.
Yeah, he was still in the group and everything. But this isn't even like what's his name? Peter Gabriel. I don't even know if Gabriel was on this album. This might have been when he left. But there's nothing like notable that I could say and you'll be like, oh yeah, it's amazing. The only song that I think is maybe known is A Trick of the Tail. But Dance on a Volcano is one of my favorite, and that's the opening track for the album. And it's very, very prog rock, like weird time signatures and stuff like that. And that's the kind of music I really like. So it's just a fantastic prog rock piece. And then my last album that I want to mention is Wired by Jeff Beck, which is my favorite album by him. This came out right after, like when I was telling you about Blow by Blow, this came out right after Blow by Blow, which is probably his most successful album and a lot of people's favorites. This is my personal favorite, and it's very like fusiony and jazzy and stuff like that. And I like some standout tracks to me are like Lead Boots is a really good one. Goodbye Pork Pie Hat is a fantastic one that has this like awesome bass and drum intro that's just super funky. It's just fantastic. And then Blue Wind is another really great track off of that. So those are some albums that I wanted to showcase to let people know, hey, check these ones out. These are really fantastic albums.
Even
though they're not on the Billboard 200.
before we move on, the last one that I wanted to make sure we highlighted, because we kind of did earlier, but not really. It was on the top 10 by Rolling Stone. Hotel California by the Eagles.
Oh yeah,
fantastic album. And I will go ahead and go on the record and say that specifically the solo to that song is probably the best guitar solo of all time. Well, again, while it's not the most complicated or while it's not the most like physically demanding necessarily, everybody knows that song. Everybody knows that solo. Everybody knows every part of that song specifically. And I mean, this is more talking about the song itself rather than the whole album. The whole album's good. Life in the Fast Lane's on there as well. Like another.
I was just about to look up the album because I wasn't sure what else.
Life in the Fast Lane's on there.
Life in the Fast Lane is awesome.
It's a really good song. I can't remember what else is on there. Those are the two like big singles off of it though. But the title track specifically, everybody knows that song. That's one of the most iconic songs in the history of classic rock. I don't like the Eagles, and I can even say this, like I know how huge that song is. You can't go, if you're listening to a classic rock station in whatever town you live in, there's a good chance you're probably not going to go an hour or two without hearing that song at some point. I feel like that is one of the iconic songs in the history of what is now considered classic rock. And I don't know. It's a great song. Like I was listening to it earlier once I saw that it was on this list, and just going back because it's been a while since I've heard it. And yeah, the dual guitars on that and how they kind of coincide with one another and they play off one another throughout the entire song is really special. And yeah, dig that song specifically. The album itself is good too. But I just wanted to give a shout out to that song specifically because I really do think it is just so iconic.
Do you think that it's coincidental that they have two songs that are about hotels? Because there's one called "The Last Resort." That's the last song.
The Last Resort? No, I don't think so.
Like a resort.
Hotel California is the opening track too, isn't it?
I just Hotel California is number one. The last song on the album is "The Last Resort."
I'm sure that wasn't on accident. I'm sure they knew what they were doing.
That's pretty cool.
I would like to think we aren't the first two discovering that in 2017.
Yeah, the album came out like 42 years ago or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now that we got all these albums, songs, music, and stuff like that, let's talk about some of the events that occurred in 1976 that are fairly notable. First, Queen performed a free concert. At Hyde Park in September 18th. Guess how many people showed up?
Well, it was free.
Hyde Park's a really, really big venue.
Oh, I can see it on our notes now accidentally. Oops. I was going to guess about 80,000.
Yeah, it's 150,000. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It is a huge show. It's fairly well known. I wasn't sure what it was.
Where's Hyde Park at?
It's in England.
Okay.
So when I looked it up,
I was thinking Chicago for some reason. I have no idea why. That's Grant Park.
That's Grant Park. I think this is a fairly well-known concert. Because when I looked up the footage from it, I was like, I've seen these things before. I've seen this concert.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we're gonna. I mean, in full disclosure of like the show and how we're gonna try to set up. I think we're gonna try to have like an events or notable occurrences every week. Things that happen, whether they be big concerts like this or bands forming or breaking up or something like that. This is, I feel like I've seen that one too, because I looked it up after you mentioned it to me. I feel like we've probably, I probably have some sort of knowledge about that I've seen it before, I'm sure.
Yeah. Another thing that, let's talk about some of the bands that just started coming up and formed and stuff like that. One of them was something that I like personally. Susie and the Banshees played their first concert at a punk festival called the 100 Club Punk Festival. I would never ever recommend Susie and the Banshees to people. It's just something I personally like. It's something that my sister got me into. But they're an interesting group, and I really dig them. They're they're a band that kind of came to be in 1976. Some other pretty notable ones, although they weren't called this at the time. U2 formed. You were telling me The Cure formed. Boston, you said, formed as well.
Boston formed. That's when their first album released. I don't know if they came together and immediately recorded one of the most classic albums.
Oh yeah, their first album.
I think they formed around this time though.
Yeah. I know you looked this up more than I did. I wasn't quite sure who came.
Yeah. The Cure came together this year. I don't think they released their first album until 78. Pretty sure The Clash came together this year as well. I wrote a couple of them.
So the big thing with punk, like punk was becoming a thing. Like, and 1977 is usually the year that people indicate the beginning of punk. And I think this is. When did the first Ramones album come out in 76?
Possibly.
I think the first Ramones album came out in
just
76.
Ramones is just the title of it.
It's called Ramones.
I'm pretty sure actually it did.
Yeah, and like this is the beginning of punk and new wave, because U2 is a huge proponent of the new wave genre coming out, and same with the Police. I'm not sure if the Police started though.
The Ramones, that's a huge album. Yeah, the Ramones album came out this year in February of 1976.
Yeah.
So, and that had Blitzkrieg Bob on it.
Yeah, it's got all the big ones on that first one. And there's probably like 20 tracks on there.
Beat on the Brat, Judy is a Punk. Yeah, they're
because they're 2-minute songs.
That's the thing. The album comes in at only 29 minutes long.
Yeah. How many songs are on there?
14.
Okay. Yeah, there's almost 20.
Yeah, the longest track on the album is 2 minutes and 35 seconds.
Exactly. Which isn't a bad thing. That's punk. That's punk music.
That's punk for you. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's important to say that like probably a ton of the punk bands that you know and love were forming at this point, because 1977 was the punk year.
Well,
we talked
about new wave earlier too, and kind of how that was mid to late 70s was kind of the early portions of that, and The Cure is definitely one of those forefront bands. Also,
U2 was another big one too.
U2 is a big one. Also, who formed this year was Joy Division, which is
Joy Division,
one of the most iconic new wave bands.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I got into them. Okay, so I read comic books on occasion, and James O'Barr's The Crow has like a bunch of Joy Division quotes in there. I think every chapter is named after a Joy Division song, and it's super cool. And that's how and that's how I got into Joy Division, was reading The Crow, which is interesting. But yeah, Joy Division's really good.
Joy Division also formed this year, and then the other last one I had two more that I had written down. Foreigner also came together this year.
That's right.
And then Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers also started in 1976, and in my opinion, they released their first song that they released right out of the gate was their best song, and so it was all downhill from there.
What was that?
Their first two singles that they released were American Girl, Girl, and then Breakdown. Breakdown was the first one they released. Breakdown as a single, I think, came out at the tail end of 1976, one of those last couple months, maybe October, November. And then An American Girl released as a single with, I think, in January of the following year. So 1977, technically. Breakdown's my favorite Tom Petty song ever.
Okay.
Easy. Like, I don't know why. Just totally dig the weird groove of that song.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've always been hugely into that song, even though it's nothing that special. I just like how subtle the guitar playing is and the groove behind it. So.
I've never been a Tom Petty fan, but as I've gotten older, I've learned to respect it. It's fine stuff.
They're fine. Not huge into them myself.
Yeah.
Their songs that are good are really good, but there's not a lot of the in-between stuff I don't really care for.
Yeah. A big event that occurred as well on October 20th. Led Zeppelin's The Song Remains the Same movie premiered in theaters.
There's a good chance you've probably seen that on VH1 once or
more
twice.
More than likely. It's the really famous live movie. So if you've ever seen a Led Zeppelin live DVD at all, it's probably the one that you've seen. A big thing that I always remember from it is like when they have Jimmy Page doing a solo, and then it's like the mirrored images. That's always something I remember from it.
Yeah.
I always thought that was super weird.
Before Instagram filters did it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's a really good live performance. I honestly don't think it's the best one though. Like like I said, I really like that I think it was 1971. I think. Performance. I love that performance. It has, in my opinion, the best version of Moby Dick. It's just got some really great tunes on there. And again, that's like early Zeppelin, and I'm really not an early Zeppelin person, as I said before. So
well, the cool thing about The Song Remains the Same is that they've got all of those weird one-off parts where it's like having adventures in Scotland or wherever the heck.
It's like I think it's like John Bonham's like estate or something like that. He's just
might be actually
like that's like his house, because he's like chilling at his home with young Jason Bonham, with like baby Jason Bonham, and like playing I think he had like a mini version of his drum set or something like that. It was super funny.
Yeah, because they each had those symbols. Was it Zoso or whatever?
Yeah, Zoso is one of them, and then the other one, I think John Paul Jones had like the Irish Trinity. And
they each had like their own symbols, and then there was like a story to go along. I don't know I don't know if they started with symbols and then came up with stories from there. They each like came up with these preposterous stories. And I know Robert Plant's like really big into high fantasy stuff. Like I'm pretty sure he's like a huge Lord of the Rings guy.
Nerd.
Yeah, so he was I'm pretty sure he was the one pushing them to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's a really cool show because their performance is awesome. It's like one of their most iconic performances ever, just because it's on that, and that
it made little kids want orange clear drum sets.
it made me want a freaking Gibson
Les Paul.
a Gibson double neck Gibson SG
Oh,
double neck
yeah.
1275 guitar.
Yeah.
That guitar is great.
Have you ever played it?
Yeah, at like Guitar World and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's I tried to save up for one when I was a kid. I hung up a picture of it on my wall and I looked at it every day and I was like, oh my God, someday.
It's so weird.
I used to pray to the altar of Jimmy Page. I'm telling you. But the good thing I didn't buy that. I mean, the Les Paul I have kind of looks like one of Jimmy Page's models that he used to play with pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And that was just by happenstance. I didn't realize that until I'd gotten into Zeppelin later on.
My brother got one exactly like his before. It was a nice, really nice guitar.
One of those like sunburst ones.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's similar to what I've got, except it's an Epiphone.
Anyway.
Which, splitting hairs and
hey man, I got an Epiphone.
Cost of money. Epiphone's good. It's still a Gibson company. It's just quality's a little different, but I don't know if it's worth like $600 or $700
really nice
difference.
Epiphone, and John Lennon played an Epiphone, so
if it's good enough for John Lennon, then it's good enough for me.
Yep.
So. But yeah, that performance rules, and so do all of the weird movie things that they do in the middle of it while they just jam in the background. Yeah.
Last thing, the 5th annual New Year's Rockin' Eve.
Holy crap. Wow.
The bands that were featured there were Donna Summer, Bachman Turner Overdrive,
oh man,
the Four Seasons, and Casey and the Sunshine Band. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if they had any problems like Mariah Carey did this past year.
I highly doubt it. I'm pretty sure they all actually sang at this point. I don't think there was a technology to make them lip sync well.
Mariah Carey might have sang, but she just couldn't hear herself in her in-ears.
Yeah.
Because
I know a lot of them usually sing with like a backtrack and then they sing over it. And it's like, it's like a chorus of people singing and then they're doing the lead. But yeah, she did horrible. Anyway, New Year's Rockin' Eve. That's who was playing there in 1976. That's all the events I got. What time are we at right now?
We're at about 1 hour and 10 minutes.
Okay, we could quickly go over this then. So that's it for 1976 that we got. Pretty decent year, I think. What do you think about it?
All right. I think this was a very, very much, we've said it before, but a transition year between classic rock groups that are established already are kind of still doing their thing, like the Eagles, groups like that. But then you've got all these other bands that are still kind of beginning, like the Bostons and the AC/DCs, like all of these notable bands that you do associate with classic rock are still kind of becoming a thing. But you've also got this older group who's like been doing it for a while, like the Steve Miller Band. But I don't think Steve Miller really hit his stride until about this year. It's a weird transition year again. Funk wasn't as prominent as well. No. I don't think so. Disco was kind of stopping being a thing, and that was, I think, starting to feed into what became eventually hip hop much later on. But I mean, things are changing this year. As you said, we're starting to see the roots of punk. We're starting to see the roots of new wave as well. And we're also starting to, hard rock is kind of starting to transition a little bit as well. We've got these hard rock groups like Rush and Kiss. Kiss was considered like...
Kiss at one point was going disco. Yeah,
that's true as well.
When Dynasty came out.
But Kiss was demonic and everybody thought they were the worst group that had ever existed. And little did they know, like 5 years from now, you're going to start getting groups like Metallica and things like that starting to come about. So I mean, Black Sabbath was also prevalent in this year. I don't know if they were prevalent. They were around. We'll say that.
I don't think Ozzy was in Black Sabbath at this point.
They released.
Might have been Dio.
I can't remember. They released an album this year, though. I know it's not a good one, though. Yeah. I looked it up, and so they're around. So they've kind of been laying the roots for metal and things like that. Very, very much just a transition year, I think, and things were changing to come into the clearer picture that we know of what rock was becoming 5 years from now. where there's a lot of different genres of it. Right now, I feel like this year it was very much all kind of like lumped together.
I think it was Technical Ecstasy. Was that the one?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never even heard of that one.
Me neither. Black Sabbath is dope though. Great live.
Every time I listen to Black Sabbath, I forget that I love Black Sabbath. Every single time.
Yeah, I'd say I'm about there too.
Like I always forget, and then I listen to it, I'm like, it's just so good. I thought Sabotage came out this year, but it didn't. So I don't care. Yeah, I agree. Like 1976 was definitely a transition year. Again, but there are some like crazy stuff that came out, like crazy iconic stuff. Like you were saying the first Boston album came out, and you know, the Stevie Wonder, the songs in the Key of Life, like that's a huge album too.
That's a huge pop album for this year. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, there's just some really great stuff like 2112, like that helped them pave their way to success. Like that was the album that got them super successful and super famous, and they were able to do whatever they wanted at that point because of that album. Like Rush was. Hotel California was a huge album too. There are some like really big, just standout albums in this year. And again, like we were saying, when we were looking at the hits and all that stuff, we're like, there's a difference between what is big at the time and what is considered the best of all time. You know, what's timeless and stuff like that. And some of those, there are albums there that are considered timeless, I think. So it was a good year. I think it was a pretty decent year.
Decent year to start. Interesting one to say the least.
Yeah,
I had to do a little bit more brushing up on this one than I expected to.
Absolutely. It turns out that like 1975 was like the crazy year.
Yeah. We'll get around to that at some point.
So yeah, that's it for 1976. The last thing that I want to do is kind of get away from all the year stuff and just, you know, expand upon it and talk about like what our favorites are and go into like musical debate possibly later down the road. But today will be a little bit easy. Today we're going to look at top 5 guitar players, our personal top 5 guitar players.
Not objective.
Not objective, just who we like. Just who we like. And are you ready?
Yeah, I've got mine here.
Okay. You go first.
It's hard to narrow mine down because I haven't thought about this in a while.
Also, by the next time, I will have an actual name for this section, so that it's just not weird transition. I will come up with
we'll come up with
some fun name for it, and then we'll be all happy and stuff like that.
It's very early in the podcast. Work with us.
Yeah.
So I lean very heavily towards blues when I listen to guitarists. As far as like ones that I like adore. So I almost had B.B. King on my list, but I didn't at the last second. And then also shout out to George Harrison as well. I don't think George is like
George Harrison's really
he doesn't get enough credit.
He
really doesn't. And I mean, the dude's a freaking Beatle, but I still don't think he gets enough credit.
My personal favorite Beatle.
Yeah, he's probably. I like Paul pretty well though, but maybe that's just because I've seen Paul in person.
I love George Harrison's solo career. I thought it was amazing. But anyway, continue.
So yeah, as far as my list goes, not really in any order either. I mean, I can give you my favorite.
No, we don't need to do order.
Above the top. You did convince me before the show. Johnny Greenwood, yeah, I'll put him on my list. Radiohead's my favorite band ever. I think Johnny he does some unique things that most other people don't, and their sound is so strange and so unique. And heck, there's some albums where he really doesn't even play guitar all that much, but when he does, he's a psycho. Like the dude's he's really outlandish and strange, and I think he's doing new interesting things in this day and age of music that not many other people are. And I don't know, like as far as musicians go, I think he's really talented. Purely guitar, I don't know. Since we identify him as a guitar player, yeah, sure, I'll throw him on my list anyway. But
I got one of those on my list too. So
okay, that's good. You want me to count down all mine or go back and forth, or what do you want to do?
You can do whatever. Just count down all yours.
Okay. Jimi Hendrix is next on my list. I debated putting this one on there because everybody's always like, oh, he's the best ever. He's probably the best ever. But I I started thinking about it too. When you listen to Jimi Hendrix, you are listening to it for his guitar playing. And so
Sure.
I love his music.
Not me, but
Not you?
dude, Mitch Mitchell is one of the best drummers of all time. So
He's very good.
he's one of the best of all time.
The guitar is definitely front and center though in most of their work.
You're right. Definitely.
So most people, I think they directly associate all of or most of their music directly with the guitar work on those tracks.
Yeah, it's called the Jimi Hendrix experience.
Yeah, I mean, no duh, but I really just dig what he was doing in that time period as well, and the amount of incredibly high tier music he put out for only living to be 27 years old is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, other people could talk forever about Jimi Hendrix and why he's the best and why he's so important. I just dig his sound. I think nobody's ever been able to replicate the sounds that he got out of his guitar.
Yeah,
like,
even if you have the pedals and everything.
Even if you have everything in line
in
2017 to rip off what he was doing, you can't get those same sounds out of his guitar the way he was able to. I think a lot of that's potentially because of the way he played with the right-handed guitar, playing it left-handed. That might be part of it.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. He did things that no one else was has ever done or has ever been able to do since him. And he's great. I really enjoy their music. Next, John Mayer. I love John Mayer. Again, he's one of those guys I used to make fun of, and I was like, John Mayer sucks. What a little wussy. Only girls like him. And then somehow I started listening to his music. I somehow Continuum got a hold of me, and I was like, I didn't expect this dude's music to sound like this. What the heck is this? And then I was like, wait, he does blues? He's blues based?
Yeah.
How did I never know this? And then from there, it was just all over. John Mayer is probably one of my favorite artists ever. And I've always I think he can go toe to toe with most other guitarists, honestly. He doesn't solo as much anymore, I don't think.
No.
He's gone a little bit more folksy on some of his recent albums, but I think he can shred with the best of them. And I think I like that he's bringing blues to the masses, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
Because when you really look at the songs that are popular by him, it's like Waiting on the World to Change. That is so blues centered, and you don't really realize that if you're just a casual listener on the radio or something. And they don't play that song on the radio very much, but back in the day, it was all over the place.
It was.
So I think he's made blues. He's somehow turned blues music into pop music in a roundabout way. And I've also enjoyed really watching him evolve from the early days of Room for Squares and No Such Thing and all of those early tracks on that first album, Room for Squares, and seeing him eventually get to a point where he's like, well, I'm popular enough now to where I can play what I've always loved, which is blues music, and I will adapt. At the height of his popularity early on, he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to form the John Mayer Trio, and we're going to go out and we're going to perform blues music. And everybody's like, all right, cool. I guess this guy can shred, and we didn't know it. So
that's cool.
Forever. And whenever we get to a year where one of his albums come out or something like that, yeah, well, I'll gush about him forever. Yeah. Next on my list, the guy I think who objectively might be the best ever. I know I just mentioned Hendrix, but the only guy who I think can potentially go above him is Stevie Ray Vaughan. Again, sticking with blues, died way too freaking young. I think I go on YouTube sometimes and I watch him play guitar, and I don't know how he does it, man. I have no idea how he does it, how he throws little bends in the middle of hammer-ons and pull-offs and things like that. Like, again, one of those other guys who I would put right alongside Hendrix is I've never heard anybody pull off the same things he's been able to pull off, whether it be in solos or just the pure sound he's getting out of his guitar. I think he is unmatched. And while he is very blues based, he has a sound to his playing that I have never heard anybody else in the blues genre do. Like people gush about him. I think most people would easily put him in their top 3 or 5 best guitarists ever. I really think he might be the best ever. Like, into this and you've never watched Stevie Ray Vaughan play, go on YouTube right now and go look up some of his solo stuff, because it's freaking it's nuts. I've never seen anybody be able to play as quick and as fast as he did. And he would just casually throw his guitar behind his neck too every now and then, or behind his back, and he's still playing at the same speed. I'm sure there's a lot of people who can do that, but
yeah,
I don't. Stevie Ray Vaughan's phenomenal. And then my favorite dude I mentioned earlier in the show, Jimmy Page. He's always been my favorite. He'll probably always be my favorite if I had to guess. Zeppelin's my favorite classic hard rock group, whatever you want to call them. And I just think he's the king of riffs. Like that, yeah. He comes up with more iconic riffs. You're talking about Wonton Song earlier.
Oh, it's so good.
So simple, but so good. And it's the driving like track through the entire song. Just everybody knows a Jimmy Page riff here or there.
Yeah.
Everybody. And he has, I don't know. I'll gush about Jimmy Page 1,000 other times on this show, so we don't need to get too much into it on episode 1. But sure. Yeah, he's my favorite.
Yeah,
probably went on way too long, but go ahead and give me your.
My 5. I'll go a little bit faster because I'm not really much of a guitar player, so I just like it because of how it sounds. But I mean, I play guitar, but
yeah,
I'm a drummer. I have here in my number 1. If I could pick a number 1, my favorite of all time is Steve Howe from Yes. He has such he almost has like a jazzy style of playing that I really enjoy. I really love songs like The Clap, which is just him playing acoustic guitar. It's like this really, I don't know how to describe it. It's a very good acoustic song. There's no lyrics or anything. It's just him playing guitar. It's really cool. I really love his style. It's just odd. It's odd and it's unique. And when you hear I mean, you could say this about all of these people, but certainly for Steve Howe, you could say about Jimmy Page too. You could say about Hendrix, but he's in that echelon of like when you hear Steve Howe play, you know it's Steve Howe playing, and I really enjoy his style. The next one I have is obviously Alex Lifeson because Rush. And Rush is amazing, but there's some really good. Again, there's like how you're saying about Page, about just like great riffs. I think
I'd put Lifeson up there.
I think Lifeson makes some like amazing riffs. There's like Spirit of the Radio. The very beginning of Spirit of the Radio is just amazing and iconic. And
most of their popular songs are like that.
Yeah. So there's just another like standout tracks. A lot of these guys are gonna. I mean, those are the 2 prog people I have.
Lifeson doesn't get enough credit. I'll
no, he doesn't. He does not. And I love how like his arpeggiation of like the chords that he's playing and stuff like that are just really cool. I really enjoy like the sounds that he has on his guitar. The chorusy kind of like if you listen to Hemispheres, like that first chord that he hits and like the chorus that's on it just sounds really good. I really enjoy that sound. The next one I have is Johnny Marr from the Smiths. And I don't quite know why I like him, but I really dig his style quite a bit. And this is more for the Smiths music. I've never really gotten into his solo stuff. I don't really care for it, but his sound for the Smiths again is very chorusy and chorus-y, and has that reverb. It's that Fender. What he's got? He's got the Jaguar, I think. What was he playing? Or maybe it's a Strat. Strat with like a twin reverb, and like that kind of sound is something that I really like personally. I think that is Johnny Marr, and Johnny Marr is just a really talented. I don't think he gets a lot of credit. Like he does. When you listen to it, you're like, that's okay. And then when you like try to look at it and play it and see what he's doing, it's like, oh, that's actually a lot more complicated than it is. Like,
he's probably like the best new wave guitarist, I'd say.
Definitely out of all those new wave bands, I think he's up there. Him and I think I was going to put Andy Summer in here from the Police because I think he's a fantastic guitar player who gets 0 credit. He gets no credit for anything. And I mean, listen to like Message in a Bottle. Like that's an awesome guitar tune.
It's hard when you're in a band with Stuart Copeland and Sting.
Sting is so overrated though.
Sting's a good bass player, but
Stuart Copeland now one of the best drummers of all time. But that's another day.
Stuart Copeland's really good.
He's amazing. So yeah, Johnny Marr is on there. Jeff Buckley, and this is almost just from like a songwriter perspective almost, but even the guitar tracks on Grace, which is his only album that he came out with. And I think another guy who died like way too young. Like I even think he died before he was 27. Like and just from like a freak accident kind of thing. I think he was drunk and decided to go swimming and he drowned somewhere. They found his body like a few days later, which sucks. But that album Grace is, I think, one of the most beautiful things I've ever listened to in my life. Like every song has like such great meaning to it, and the guitar, it's mostly just him and the guitar perfectly situates those feelings that he's trying to perceive or whatever. And like the song Grace is one of those really fantastic tracks that's on there. I'm really a big fan of Last Goodbye and Lover, You Should Have Come Over, I think is the other one. That's another like fantastic tune. And it's just powerful. Like the guitar playing with his voice, it's incredibly powerful. And you can't, if you ever heard his Hallelujah, like that's what he's mostly known for. That's the kind of energy that he's bringing to each song is like that. And it's just fantastic. I have two tied because I just thought of it, but I have Billy Corgan and I have Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. Billy Corgan's from Smashing Pumpkins. Josh Homme's from Queens of the Stone Age. The reason I like this is strictly because of how their guitar sounds. Are they good guitar players? Yeah, like Josh Homme's a fantastic guitar player. I think he's better than Billy Corgan as far as skills concerned. But Billy Corgan is also like a really great guitar player too. But I distinctly like love the distortion that they have like on their guitars, like both of them. I just think it's just like especially Billy Corgan. I bought a Big Muff because of that, like because of his sound in particular, because I love like how A Siamese Dream, like that entire album. I love how that entire album sounds. Like the guitar in it is fantastic. And then Josh Homme is just like this weird like stoner rock thing that I don't know, like it's really good.
They have a sound that really, I mean, I keep mentioning sounds that nobody else can really replicate, but I never really heard another group that sounds like Queens of the Stone Age.
It's like they call it stoner rock, but it's kind of rockabilly-esque, I guess, and like westerny, and I don't know, it's really weird, but it's good. And
then his work in Them Crooked Vultures is also just great.
Yeah, it is great. So yeah, those are my top guitar players. And again, this is coming from a drummer's perspective, so I don't really know how else to describe them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference.
Sorry if my descriptions of them aren't the greatest, but once we get into drummers, we can talk about it.
And I'll be way less versed in drummers when it comes time because I was way more.
We'll be in the reverse there because I just did a thing where I was talking to somebody about drummers and it lasted literally like. It could have lasted 45
to an hour. It was like 20 or 30
minutes
long, I think.
Yeah, and we had to cut ourselves off. We're like, okay, so gotta stop. So, but yeah. Anyway, that's it for the first episode of Reeling into Years. Sorry. For Reeling into Years. Again, the year was 1976. Thank you all for watching. Are we putting this on video?
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna go up on YouTube at some point, and then the website
website. Okay, so check out. You can listen to it on video, or you can watch it on video. Listen to it audio on www.modelcitizensmedia.com.
That's correct.
Okay.
Modelcitizensmedia.com.
It'll be on YouTube. And again, it'll be on the website.
iTunes. It should be up on iTunes.
It should be. Hopefully, if I do everything right, it should be on iTunes. I'm gonna try to get it on Google Play.
We're recording this before the website is in place.
So what other services are there?
As far as wrap up stuff. So yeah, modelcitizens.com or modelcitizensmedia.com. Sorry.
Yeah.
But go check that website out. We're a podcasting service. We have a video game show that I co-host with Max Roberts. You can listen to Michael and myself. We're both on the Model Citizen show, which is the flagship show of our website, featuring us, Max Roberts, and Mario Rivera. You can check out all of our YouTube channel where all of the episodes are also stored, and then be sure to subscribe to all of our shows on iTunes and Google Play and leave us a review and all that good stuff that we would appreciate. And keep coming back to the website because I don't know what's going to be there yet. So
Yeah,
it's going to be a surprise.
We have no idea. Like right now, there is really nothing up. I think it's just a page that's just just nothing.
We're trying to bank these episodes so that we
Yeah.
have stuff to release once it does go live. So
Exactly.
chances are, if you're listening to this first episode and you've gotten this far into it, one, thank you. And then, but two, we're going to, there probably will be multiple episodes of this going up at the same time. I would guess episode 2 of this will also be live as well, if not 3. And I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see by then. I would assume I would assume at least 2.
At least 2 episodes of
At
this
least
should
2
be
episodes
live
will be
by the time this goes live.
So yeah, where can people follow you, Logan?
Twitter wise, you can follow me at Moreman12.
Cool. And you can follow me at super_Rooz. That's ROOZ.
Oh, and you can follow all things Model Citizens
right.
related at M Citizens Media on Twitter. We need a new Twitter handle. That might change by the time this goes live. Just a heads up. So if you go search M Citizens Media, there might be nothing there. But
that's really not that great.
Oh, it's not very good. We're in a really weird place because we're trying to squeeze everything in. Like I think you're only allowed 15 characters, if I'm correct. So
yeah, I think so.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
To find something that's not taken one, and then also
fit Model Citizens Media. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Check M Citizens Media. Maybe it'll be nothing, but maybe it's us, and
maybe it's us.
We'll give you more info on that in the future. Again, we're just trying to bank all these episodes and get them ready for the launch of the site. That way we don't just say, hey, here's our site, and there's no content.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, thanks again, everybody, for listening. Oh, wait.
Do you know one last thing on the last thing?
Sure.
Do you know what year we want to do next week yet?
Next year?
Or next week? Again, episode 2 is probably
next week? Next year.
Next year.
Next week, the next year we're going to do is, I'm going to just say what year? 1993. I think that's the one that you said you wanted.
Yeah, for some reason I was fixated on that one. Don't really know why, but
I think that's when Siamese Dream came out.
That's when In Utero came out.
Dude, that's a really good album.
It's a great album. We'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. So thank you again for listening and or watching, and we'll see all of you guys and gals later.